Hey, it's John from Adults Have Toys Too, and it's been a while. And that's kind of one of the things I want to talk about today. It's about getting back into things that you find interesting, things that you find energizing, things that you have a passion for, but you've kind of fallen away from. My inspiration for this actually comes from a couple of different places, but one of the places is actually this video from Lucy Lumen, who's a photographer that has a great YouTube channel and a Substack. And she talks about her experiences about trying to fit photography into her life. So I'm not going to rehash her points because you could watch her video and you should. But what I want to talk about is kind of my own personal experience with a similar concept. And while we're talking about that, I also want to talk a little bit about Harmon Phoenix in 120, because this is actually a pretty unique film and part of what got me out of my rut and got me out and working again. I think we can all relate to finding a hobby or finding a pastime that we really start to enjoy, and it becomes easy to just do it because we're having fun, we're learning, we're making new experiences. But then it comes to a point where we still enjoy it. It's still important to us, but now it feels more like work, or it feels like there's more effort that's needed to get you out the door to go do this thing. And a lot of times we try to say that we're just feeling unmotivated, uninspired. And that's probably true. But what I found is when you're at that point, something that's important to consider is this idea of discipline. We don't always consider this concept of discipline when it comes to something that we enjoy, because why should we have to discipline ourselves? Why should we have to push ourselves to do something that we already like doing? But I think you already have the answer to that question, because you've probably found yourself in exactly that position before. And for me, with photography, it's something that I really do enjoy and have a passion for. And I was continuing to expand and learn and shoot more types of film stocks and get involved with developing. And it was all very exciting. And it still is. But a lot of things get in the way. Work, life, other things. And it's easy to take the things that we consider to be unessential and put them on the back burner or not consider them. And it's kind of like losing oxygen. When you're breathing and things are working well, you can continue and it's very easy. But you cut off that oxygen. You start to have a desire, you start to have a drive, but at some point, it's going to die. You're going to lose it. So how do we infuse oxygen back into that system? So I felt I was sputtering out, so I decided to employ some discipline. I said, you know what? I'm going to go do it. I don't care. I'm just going to take some time. I'm going to pack up a camera. I'm going to go out and I'm going to shoot something. And to make sure that this task was completely dedicated to just that photography mission, I decided to bring out the most bulky and cumbersome camera I have, so I really couldn't be doing anything else but shooting photos. So I shot it on my Mamiya RB67, and I used Harmon Phoenix in 120 film. So before we get out there, let's talk about Harmon Phoenix for just a quick moment. If you're in the know, Harmon is the company that makes Ilford, which is a very famous black and white film company. And they actually decided to build out a brand new color film, which is a very, very difficult task. Right now, it seems like Kodak is the only one really making color film. Fujifilm might be. And then Invisicote in Europe has some facilities to do color film, but the quality coming out of there is artistic, to say the least. So it was really exciting to see a company as big and with as much history as Harmon has building a brand new color film stock. It initially came out in 35mm, and then later they released it in 120. And I think this is a game changer. So when we look at Harmon Phoenix, especially in 35mm, I would say it's kind of an acquired taste. What I mean is, think about like wine or whiskey. There's a lot going on, and your first exposure is going to be kind of overwhelming. A little bit too much noise. In fact, speaking of noise, you could talk about something like electronic dance music or heavy metal. Both of these genres, if you just jump into the deep end, you're just going to be overwhelmed. You can't bring it together as a whole because there's just too many pieces that don't seem to make sense. You have to find kind of an easier entry point and then be able to taste to be able to figure out where the parts are. And once you can separate the parts, you can see it as a whole. So Harmon Phoenix in 35mm is very grainy, very contrasty, not very friendly to the photographer as far as exposure latitude. It takes a lot of work to get something good out of it, and it can be very frustrating because every time you take a shot, it costs you some money. And to have these fails or have these things that don't work the way you expect can be very frustrating. So what I like about Harmon Phoenix in 120 is having that bigger negative really smooths out a lot of those rough edges. The grain is a lot less pronounced, and because you have this bigger image to work with, and you're generally going to be working with a slower camera, you could focus a lot more on the fundamentals and making sure you get the most out of it. Harmon rates the film at 200 ISO, though the engineers say it's probably closer to 160 or 125. And what I found, shooting it at 100 is probably the sweet spot, getting that little bit extra overexposure. And for this shoot, I decided to go out to a local bridge that we call the Lost Boys Bridge. And the reason we call it that is just because it was in the movie Lost Boys. So it's relatively close to my house, packed up the car, took off. I apologize, I don't really have B-roll of that because I focused just on the photography. So I lugged this beast of a camera out to the bridge, and I decided to put a polarizer on it, which actually cuts the light a little bit. So I metered the scenes for about 64 ISO. Keeps the shutter speeds kind of low, so I brought a tripod with me, and I'm gonna show you all the photos. There's only 10 photos on a roll when you're shooting 6x7, and all but one of them was shot on a tripod. So let's just quickly go through them. I want to talk you through my impressions about Harmon Phoenix and 120, and then I want to close out on what this did for me about just kind of breaking out of that box and getting things moving again. So my first shot is just kind of an overview of the bridge itself. So this is as I'm walking up to it, and I'm actually pretty impressed. Harmon Phoenix has kind of a high contrast look, very similar to reversal or slide film. And the colors are not true to life. And so you're getting not what you see, you're getting more of an artistic representation of. And I think this is well exposed. You can see still detail in the sky. And in this one, I kind of like the dead tree that's reaching up. Almost kind of looks like a petrified hand grabbing onto the bridge. Next is this shot, which is kind of walking down the path towards the bottom of the bridge. Again, the colors are not true to life. That bush and those rocks were not that green or that blue, but I like the way it looks here in the scan from the film. In this, I tried to stop down a little bit to get a deeper depth of field, but I still feel like there's some layers to the photo. So the rocks in the foreground, kind of the bush in the middle, and then further into the background. So overall, I think a well-balanced image, and I like the way Harmon Phoenix is rendering colors. This next one is actually pretty interesting. This is the only handheld shot I took, and I saw these flowers growing off to the side, so I decided to pull the camera off the tripod, get over to it, get nice and close, and the RB67 is actually very good at getting up close with this bellows focus. I like the details that you're able to pull out of it. You can see the texture of the white petals. You can see inside of the trumpet itself. It's kind of glowing a little bit from the sunlight. And then the leaves were not this green, but the way the film rendered it looks very impressive. What's interesting about this, though, is after the fact, I looked up what kind of flower this was, and this is Datura, or otherwise known as Jimson weed. And so apparently, it's not hallucinogenic. It's actually induces delirium if you were to eat it or brew it into a tea, so much so that you would actually lose all sense of self. And in fact, from what I've read, is people advise very strongly against doing that because it's a terrible experience. So again, just kind of an interesting thing. These things actually grow all over the place here in Southern California. And I actually like this one enough, not so much the subject matter, but how it looks and the colors and that light coming from that trumpet of the flower, that I decided to make a nice print of it. And it came out really well. I think this really plays well on paper. And so I'm happy I was able to do that. Moving on to the next, kind of getting under the bridge. This is an upward angle towards the bridge. I think it's okay. I don't think there's enough context to this photo. I think it's a little bit too tight, but not tight enough to be interesting, but it's well exposed. So I do like the technical aspect of it. I just don't like the artistic aspect of this one. This next one here, I think is one of my favorite ones of the roll. This is actually underneath the bridge, a little bit of tagging on the wall. But if you look at it, I really like the colors and I really like the shadows. So sometimes people will think that having a narrow exposure latitude would be a negative because you can lose stuff in the shadows, you can lose stuff in the highlights. But here I think it shows where it's an asset or a strength because the shadows are very, very well defined. And then the wall itself kind of pops out. I really like that balance between the shadow and the light. I don't know any context of the tagging, so don't judge that, but I think the colors worked well for this photo. Now the next two were kind of a bit of a disappointment, but interesting at the same time. So this one here, there's a little bit of a stream that's going underneath the bridge, and there was a lot of greenery growing. And like I said, this is not true to life color. And so the greenery is just overwhelming. So it did not feel this like lush and jungle-like. I mean, it's almost like a lost world. You would expect to see like a dinosaur come out from the foliage out there. So again, kind of overwhelming. I tried to stage the Six Flags Magic Mountain in the background for contrast. I don't know what that is in the top of the frame. I think it was just something in the foreground that kind of is distracting. And then this next one here, I think is better balanced. You see more of the water. You can see that tower in the background. But again, those greens are just so overwhelming, but I think it's a little bit balanced out on that right side where the tree's coming from. You get a little bit of that brown. So of the two, I like this one, but I'm not a big fan of either of them. So then from here, I decided to start packing up for the day. I kind of wanted to get a shot straight down the bridge. So I came up to the pathway, set the tripod straight in the middle, and took a shot down the bridge. There was actually a runner that kind of rounded the corner just as I hit the shutter. But I think I did pretty well here. It's not perfectly level, but that's easy to fix in post. But it is well centered, well exposed. You can see details in the shadows while still seeing sky detail. So even though there's kind of a tight exposure latitude here, I think this worked out really well. And then for these last two photos, I tried to catch a bicyclist, and I kind of failed. The first one here, I set a higher shutter speed, which is good. I set a focal point that I tried to think about as the bicyclist passed, but obviously I missed that, and so they're out of focus, though the exposure is good. And then this last one here, while I did catch the focus, I think it would have been more impactful with the bicyclist coming in my direction versus leaving. And I think my exposure wasn't as good here because I lost a ton of detail on the left. But let's talk about this as a whole. So this was my first experience shooting Harmon Phoenix in 120, and I did have an interest in doing it. But in order for me to do this, I kind of had to force myself. I kind of had to tell myself, you know what? I know I don't really feel like it right now, but I'm going to pack this up, get in the car, and go. And you know what? I am so thankful I did. Once I got there and started moving around and looking for the shots and considering my exposures, I was in it. And all those things that I forgot that I enjoyed about it started to come back. It reminded me of these things. Because if we're not regularly exposing ourselves to it, it's very easy to start losing them. It's very easy to forget why we enjoy these things to begin with. And then when I got back, I developed the film and scanned it and saw the results. That really put the icing on the cake. I was really impressed and very happy with the results I got out of it. And it kind of reinforced my trust in myself. It kind of reinforced the trust in my abilities in that I can make art and I can make something that I find enjoyable, and hopefully you do too. And to be honest, this video here is exactly what I'm talking about. I haven't posted one of these in a long time. It does take time to do it, but as I'm standing here, I'd set up my lights, I set up my studio, I'm here in front of the camera talking to you. I'm remembering why I enjoy this, why I love connecting with you. And so if you got this far, I want to thank you for spending time here with me. I do these things for me. I just put it out there because I enjoy it. I like the process. I like being able to see the results of a creation. But I also really enjoy it when it happens to resonate with somebody. There's somebody who sees it and connects with it. So if you are that person, I thank you so much, and please leave a comment and let me know what you thought. And in the description below, I invite you to look at Lucy Lumen's video and also check out my Substack where I wrote a little bit more about these photos and the process that went into it. But until next time, never stop having fun.